Hello, good people. It's Sana Rasul of HR Girlfriends, and I have a guest today. So I'm not going to start running my mouth yet. I want to see a couple of folks join us. And while you do, please share, like, make sure that you get your network involved in tonight's social media live. Many of you may remember before the pandemic, I would do a Tuesday night social media live where I'd cover various HR topics, all things that matter to us in HR and business and as women. And, pandemic, and I had to slow things down, recalibrate. But what I think is amazing is during the pandemic, one of my favorite sectors really picked up, and that was technology. And I have been watching tech tools arrive on the scene, and I am super excited about some of the ones that I've personally selected to promote and collaborate with. And you'll get to learn more about that in a little bit anyway. So, I am waiting for folks to join. I'm going to watch and see. We got some folks coming and I'm going to grab LinkedIn, Facebook, make sure everybody can see us. So no matter where you are, if you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, or if you are on YouTube, be sure to like, subscribe, share so that others can take part in tonight's session. I'm so sorry. There we are. So we had the double take there. So let me introduce you to who I call Wes, but his full name is Wesley. Wesley Brock. I am so excited to have Wesley here with me tonight. If you saw on our events calendar or you got our newsletter, you knew that Wesley and I are talking about resumes. Wesley, when you and I connected, did you think we'd be here this quick?
No, it really did come together very quick and it's very exciting.
Awesome. So, Wes, please tell everyone who you are, like what background you come from professionally, and how did we end up here today?
Absolutely. So I'm the founder of Ideal Resume, and the tool is aimed at helping job seekers, career coaches, HR people, and all different categories in those areas, helping them to get resumes tailored to jobs that a candidate is interested in. So it makes life easier for the HR people. It improves experiences and employment outcomes for the job seekers. So the aim is to benefit all different angles of the market. Um, I often say that there is a lot of tools and technology, as you alluded to, for the hiring companies, but not as much for the job seeker side of things. So that's kind of where we try to come in to provide help. My background in getting to that point is not an exact HR background trajectory or anything of
Don't
the
worry,
sort.
none of ours is. You ask anybody in HR, 20 years in the making, no one is. People study biology and ended up here. So don't worry, Wes, you're in good
Yeah,
company.
yeah, absolutely. I had a background in marketing, corporate marketing, and things of that nature. And really, the pandemic just made me go full steam into Ideal Resume. It was a project I've been working on for a while in the background. And like a lot of other people, the pandemic just sort of was the means to make that change and kind of go all in on Ideal Resume and the different things I've been working on there. And not coming from the HR background, I think maybe when you and I talked before, we said that maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a way to kind of look at some ways things are done and see if there's different ways to do it without any preconceived ideas of how it's been done in the past. So that's kind of where we're coming from with Ideal Resume.
Right. So tonight, if you hadn't already seen, we're going to be doing live resume scoring. What in the heck is live resume scoring? We're going to show you what Ideal Resume is all about. And I'll give you my HR take on it. When I came across Ideal Resume, I immediately was like, yes, I need to know who's behind this. I need to see it, feel it, experience it. Not because I'm in the job market, obviously, but because of what I do with HR girlfriends, the large amount of job seekers I encounter. Also, I support clients all across the board from nonprofit to Fortune 500. And everyone is trying to figure out this formula, right? There was a time when applicant tracking systems were still new and mysterious, right? Way more than it is now. People will go, how do I get in? How do I get picked, right? And then people started giving advice, giving insider tips, but no human tip could ever get you through the technology of it all, right? No human communication could really explain the depths that the technology goes through to ensure one, that it's accepting the resume and all the other pieces of information requested by the company, but also how does it get parsed? How do you make it to the top? How do keywords come in play? I know lots of career coaches are teaching their job seekers keywords. And this doesn't matter what you're in. I do not want you to get this mistaken. Yes, HR Girlfriends is all things women in HR, but this conversation today is about job seekers. So I don't care if you are applying for a warehouse job at $25 an hour or if you're a registered nurse making over six figures. You are going to, if not have already, waiting on some employer who you've uploaded your resume to their organization's website. You're waiting for them, right? Waiting for them to see you, recognize you, see your talents, and all of that behind their computer screen. And so I said to Wes when we met, I said, listen, we have to do something live. Now, we're going to be scoring live resumes tonight, and we'll walk you through what that looks like. But we're going to be doing that tonight and also on December 7th. So if you are were not able to get your resume in, that means that you have to be following our social media and getting our newsletters Tuesdays and Thursdays because we've been requesting resumes from anyone. So whether it's your father-in-law who wants to go out and to chemical engineering or the architect or whoever, it doesn't matter. Have them upload their resume and take part in our next live scoring we're doing on December 7th, same time, same place. So I'm going to start with having Wes share his screen because what I want to do is I want to start scoring just one resume. We've got a few in queue. We're not going to do very many tonight, but we want to show you the power of the tool. And then Wes and I are going to talk about the complexities around what you do when you're building your resume because what's the most amount of money, Wes, you've heard someone pay for a resume redo or a resume rewrite?
Oh, well into the several hundreds of dollars, even getting up into the thousand.
Yeah, depending on what field you're in, right? If you're a six-figure individual, you're probably willing to spend several $100s. $1,000 is a drop in the bucket, right? Um, but then what happens when they redo your resume? Looks great to the human eye, but no one calls you back after you're submitting that resume online? Right? So it's that disconnect that I think Ideal Resume is going to help you identify. So I'm going to stop talking because I want you to know that Wes is super smart. In fact, I was really feverishly taking notes during our first conversation because even he brought light to me about the way technology works in this space. I'm not a dedicated recruiter, and even those who are don't have that real crux of knowledge. So, Wes, I'm going to step over and let you do your thing.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Sana. Yeah, everything I know is just from asking lots of questions. I've just tried to learn as much as I can and be a sponge from learning from, I've learned a lot from you and just asking questions everywhere I can in terms of HR, what goes on in the software in the background. So that's kind of how we've gotten to where we are. So I'll go ahead and start screen sharing and pull up a new tab here so that we can look at some of those live resume scoring examples that we're going to run through. I'll
Hmm.
just get that screen share pulled up here and then we'll jump into that. And here we go. Okay, so are we good seeing the dashboard of Ideal Resume there, Sana?
Yeah, we are now good to go.
Okay, great. So I went ahead and preemptively put a few of these in the system, but I haven't really done a lot. So we're really actually kind of doing this together live to make it as authentic as possible. I've just kind of preloaded them for the sake of saving time. But we'll look at a few of these examples here. This is just in my demo account. I've put some of these resumes in that we've received. And I think we'll start here with this one here as an example. And this is the way anybody who uses our tool sees it. They see all their past scans in there. So I've kind of just set it up as a user here. So we have the job description. Now, we got these job descriptions by going after job titles that our candidates told us that they were interested in. So we just went on Indeed, like any average job seeker might do, and search for jobs in certain geographies for, in this case, human resources manager. So this one is a fresh job. It came right off of Indeed. I just preloaded it here. So that's the first thing we do. We put our job description in. So this is what we're interested in applying to. We want to see how well our resume stacks up to this particular job description. So this is the resume that I've already put in. And interestingly, Sanaa, do you want me to kind of comment on the original format of some of these resumes and the templates that they were in and give any just general tips along the way on formatting? Or do you want me to just jump right into the actual score aspect?
No, I say jump in, give them tips, give them to the scoring. I want this to really, really be impactful.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll bring up this one. I have these all pulled up here just by first name. A couple of things that you'll notice, you can see all these uh, core competencies, these skills are all lined up that way. In the original template here, we can see them, they were actually set up like this. And the way it gets reformatted, it kind of gives an indication that this may be a challenging format for some applicant tracking systems to digest and interpret. As you can see, even in our case, it ended up just trying to format them all in a singular uh, skill per line. So we can get into more some of the tips on formatting and kind of how to tell where there might be challenges for applicant tracking systems to digest the resume template. But let's just jump into the score here for this particular one. We'll hit analyze in Ideal Resume here, and then we're going to see shortly our little workspace, and we'll see our score. So that's our current resume score. And to figure out why we got a 16% score, we look at our different categories here. We have little tiles that show us information about how we got to that score. So we've got a lot of red indicators here. So skills is one of the best places to start for a candidate. So our system, just like the applicant tracking systems of employers, are looking to see what skills are in the job description. So we fed it a job description to begin with, and then we fed it the resume, and it's going to extract all the skills from the job description and the resume, and then see what's missing from our resume. So as a candidate, though, now we can actually look at that and see what skills we were missing. So we've got a handful here. And if we're wondering, well, where did we get those skills from? We just click on one and then we'll see them highlighted in the job description. So if I'm a candidate, I can immediately figure out, okay, I can definitely improve my resume for this particular job by adding any of these skills that are appropriate for me to add as a candidate. So that's number one there. The second really big area is job titles. So a lot of the applicant tracking systems are set up to look for the job title that is the job description we're looking at, to try to find that in the resume of the candidate. So if we're a large company and we've got 300 resumes that came in for a job description that we've got out there, it's going to filter them by resumes that have a similar or matching job title, because the assumption is that, okay, this candidate has been performing this particular job and therefore they might be a good match. Interestingly, job titles, the most important place to take note of your job title match. So if we're looking at this resume, we'd want to pay attention to the most recent work experience. Most applicant tracking systems are programmed to look at the most recent work experience as defined by what the candidate has provided. So in this case, this one's saying 2011 to present. We know based on the present term there that this is the current role of this candidate. So it's executive administrative assistant, and the job title that we are applying to was human resources manager. So that's why we're seeing this red indicator here for job title saying did not find the job title human resources manager. What's really interesting is without knowing the background of the candidate and what experience they have, we can just take a look at what happens when we make these changes to the score. And again, we're not saying this resume should have the job title changed automatically, but just as an example here to illustrate what happens if we go ahead and match that job title in the most recent or current work experience. As it is now, it's saying it's not matching. We're at a 16% score. And then if we rescan now with that matching job title, we're going to see a big change. It brings us way up to 66%. And it makes sense when we look at what the job title was to what we've changed it to. That's a very different line of work. So, in that particular case, we can see how we can easily identify issues in that resume and try to enhance it. So, another area here we look at is certifications. This one I thought was interesting. When I put this job title in earlier, or this job description, like I said, I didn't go through this in detail, but I did notice this one little part that popped up. You've got the human resources information system term there, and it's recognizing it as a certification. And if we look back at the job description, so we got that certification there, HRIS, show in job description. Find that, there it is down at the bottom. So this candidate again could easily add that term as well, and that would go into their certifications, not just a skill. It's recognizing that as a certification in this particular instance. So that's just one example there. In this particular case, we've got this resume. We went from, I think what were we sent off 16%, I think, to start with.
16%.
Yeah, and then by changing the job title and matching that, we can increase that significantly. It
I
also could
mean, it
really,
went up 50 points from 16 to 66, just ensuring that her job title matched the title of the job she was applying to.
yeah, absolutely.
Now let's talk about that because I think you and I had this conversation. So let's say, it's kind of tricky, and not that we're going to say either of us are the guru in this response, but, if I'm currently an HR director, right, human resources director, and I'm going after a human resources manager role, well, I'm in a quandary because what we know is that applicant tracking systems give us credit when titles and keywords match. But I'm not a human resources director. So it can't give me existing current credit for that because the titles don't match. Now, talk to me about what you hear or what you've heard is best practice. Because I'll tell you that even as an HR person, I'm like, I'd put it in there somewhere. I'd figure it out. I'd rather be picked for the job and explain it later.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'd say first off, for one, it can help a candidate if you're a candidate and you're applying to lots of different jobs, as many candidates do. I hear candidates say that they've applied to 100 jobs over the course of a month or something like that. So if they're going through lots of applications, the idea here is that you can quickly ascertain what your best opportunities are. So if you've got a job title, there's other instances. This one was a little bit more of an extreme example, and again, we're doing this live, so it's not like we're cherry picking out perfect examples of ones we can make the modifications to. But
Mhm.
if I'm a candidate and I have a job title that is close or similar, uh, like you said, it could very well be appropriate and viewed by a lot of people as being appropriate to make a small modification if it's the exact same work. The reason being is because not all companies describe the same job in the exact same way. More and more, I've noticed companies using creative job titles that may not necessarily be standard job titles. And that's a whole other story about how to help companies with writing their job descriptions. But if I'm a candidate and it's a copywriter as a job title, and I have a content creator or something to that effect where I perform the exact same actual work and skills and function, then
Mhm.
it can make a lot of sense, I think, to make that adjustment if you truly possess that skill to get the opportunity to get noticed.
Absolutely. I'd rather call the position what the future organization calls it and go from there, right? And making some really important tweaks, really customizing it to the role that I'm applying to. I find it interesting. One of my favorites that I will repeat whenever appropriate is director of first impressions, i.e., the receptionist. It's one of those things. I've heard HR directors or chief HR officers called the chief happiness officer. I
Hmm.
mean, there are all
Yeah.
of these creative titles, and even within HR, we have these conversations all the time, right? So what what does it mean if I'm a senior HR business partner and you're a senior HR generalist? Is that the same thing? If I'm an HR generalist and I'm a coordinator now, then was I doing the same work? So there are all of these nuances, and unfortunately, there isn't a global standard for positions and titles, especially when the work, right? We have to create better titles to attract higher grade talent, whatever that means. So, talk to me about that specific resume. Is that resume the way you first received it? Is that how you see resumes come in, all pretty icons?
Yeah, it is. I see a lot of resumes that way, and it's actually something that we're working on this very week, actually, at Ideal Resume, to add the function to show candidates some of the design issues that, or some of the design elements that can cause issues for them with applicant tracking systems. So yeah, I'll just share that again on the screen to show the original format of the resume, because it is, like you said, really common. It's not saying this is a bad resume. It is the common thing that many job seekers are doing, because it's both the templates that are available from everything from Google Docs to Microsoft Word resume templates to resume templates you might even go pay for online from a premium resume builder site. There is this trend to make them look aesthetically pleasing, but to not really take into consideration what that might do for the software that's actually the piece of the thing that needs to read that resume to begin with. Um,
Right.
I'll show that resume one more time here as an
While you're pulling
example.
that up, Wes, so my cousin is here watching us, and she asked a question about, she's former military, she's a veteran, and she said, "Well, when I was in the military, I was an NCOIC." Of course, I have no idea what that means, but she said, but it was the equivalent of an office manager in corporate America, the real world, right? And think about that. No one would pick up NCOISC. None. We would, even if you spelled out the abbreviation,
Yeah,
right? So we got to be very mindful about the title and language used by the organization. I know that when I was job hunting years ago, I haven't had to do it in a while. I don't know if I paid that much attention to the language being used, because
right.
let's just assume that that organization has taken time, energy to one, formulate the job description, tell the applicant tracking system what to look for. They're not going to give me a concession because I have some creative title.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a really interesting thing. That's a whole nother area that I will say I do not have expertise on for
Mhm.
military. I have heard that though recently, and it's something I'm very interested in learning about. That'll be something I'll be asking a lot of questions on to those who have some insight on that, because I think that's a very relevant topic. Those who have an extreme degree of skills coming from the military that do not have the same titles to translate over to a piece of software that says, okay, this is a good candidate fit. Whereas a human can look at it and say, wow, what experience, you could fit this role and this role and this role. But at the moment, it does not appear that the software, the applicant tracking systems, are set up to be able to ascertain that in a way that a human could.
Absolutely. And then, some of the questions I get all the time are about the types of applicant tracking systems. I remember several years ago, I went to an HR tech conference, and the count at that time, so I would say 2014, was almost 25,000 HR related technology tools in the market. That was 2014.
Oh,
And
I
I
believe
bet
it.
you there was some startups that were left out in that count, I would almost assume. And so it's really hard to determine what applicant tracking system you're going to apply to. And don't ever assume that because you're applying to Taleo or Bamboo HR at this company, that it is set up in the same mechanism that the other organization set it up.
Yeah.
Customization is real.
Yep.
Very much how you can pass a background check at one company and cannot pass it at the other. Everything can be customized. Organizations have to create their threshold for paying, right? Some have a wider threshold and some have a more lean threshold. But that doesn't mean that because you notice and recognize that the technology is the same, that it's going to be reading your resume the same. And so when you think about a tool like Ideal Resume, you think to yourself, okay, so what's the big deal? Well, human error is real, right? And also, when things are human designed, it's hard to take into account the real power of the applicant tracking system's design, inherently designed. If I get 500 resumes, the system is designed so that I don't have to read 500 resumes. There's just no way. How do
Yeah.
how do I get the minimum a number of people with the most qualifications. That's why we pay top dollar for those systems. Just so you know, if you've never gone through a pricing process with those systems, they're not cheap, right? But there's a reason they're not cheap, right? These people sit around and they configure and design the best technology for the way we apply for jobs and the way we work. And so I really believe, and I hate to say this, right? I think there is a role for someone who has no resume at all. I don't think there is an opportunity to cut out the development of the resume. You still have to have a resume developed. But when it comes to how do you fine tune it so you make sure you're getting the best score as possible, that's what we're talking about. So, an
Yep.
ideal resume, Wes, talk to me real quick about what it means to get a score of 66. Sort of what does that really mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. You made me think of that when you were mentioning the customization options in applicant tracking systems. So in scoring with Ideal Resume, that is a great point to bring up. It's not to say that this is the definitive score that will be everywhere you go. It's to give you kind of a barometer, a starting point to know, all right, is my resume a reasonably good match, and therefore will most, in spite of customization, in spite of the different changes that could be different from one ATS to the other, is my resume have a reasonably good chance of being surfaced near the top of a dashboard of an ATS where there's 300 other resumes in there. That's kind of the starting point we're looking at. So we're looking at several factors, just like the applicant tracking systems are: the job title match, the skills in the resume. And then another really important one is where the skills are in the resume. That's actually a big part of the customization you spoke of. Is an ATS oftentimes will let you select if you want to ignore skills that are not listed within work experience. That was actually something I was going to lead into, if it makes sense to you here on that resume template
Let's
now, if
do
that
it.
sounds good.
Yeah, let's do it.
These sections here, like the one in this case here, you have core competencies, or sometimes it'll be listed like just as a skills section. Those are fine to have for a candidate to list those skills in there. But the really important part and the insight behind the curtain with the applicant tracking system is that the most important place to include these skills is within the work experience. And the reason being is that some ATSs will let the user set it up so that it will ignore skills that it cannot quantify. So ignore skills that are listed in a skills section. The reason being is there's no dates with them. There's no job title, there's no dates, nothing to quantify other than saying that the candidate claims that they have these skills or competencies. Whereas skills that are listed within professional experience or work experience sections are different because you have a date. As you can see in this case, we have 2011 to present. We're looking at almost 12 years there of experience. So in this case, if we find the ATS is going to hunt for skills here in this role as executive administrative assistant and say, okay, these skills, this candidate has 11 years of experience with, for example, I'm just looking for one here, expense reports, let's see, collective bargaining agreements. Whereas if those skills were listed up here, it would say name of skill, zero experience. So it's a huge difference that a huge advantage a candidate, I should say, can give themselves by, if they're going to have a skill section like this, it's fine, but make sure every single one of these skills is also in the relevant work experience, because the ATS is going to associate those dates with your total experience.
All right, so scroll down just a tad. One of the things that I want to point out here is that if you were here at the beginning when we scanned this resume live, the resume itself got a 16% just off of the resume we received directly from this candidate. She is a live job seeker, I promise you. She submitted her resume on her own, and it was scored at 16% out of obviously a 100% match for the job. Now, she said she was looking for an HR manager position. Now, anyone looking at this resume could automatically determine that she is not a good fit for an HR manager role. Why? Because one, the job title she's held, the roles and responsibilities. I'm looking at this, right? Specifically as a person who looks at resumes. So I want to point that out because if you saw that she got 16%, that 16% was actually earned rightfully. Her resume did not match the HR manager role that we found on Indeed for her to apply to. Think about the power in that, right? Some people say, well, 80%, there's this rule and it's loose. It's a loose rule. The loose rule is if you have 80% of what's in a job ad, go apply for it. Well, I'm not a mathematician, but I know that those 80% counts are some of the roughest 80% that we can probably come up with, right? We look, we go, I've got this, I've got that, not that. So we're making our own determination about what that 80%, 80/20 rule is. But imagine having technology that is so easy. You can pull it up anytime. It's your technology. It's not inaccessible to a job seeker. In fact, Ideal Resume and HR Girlfriends are going to make this so accessible at such an amazing price. But we'll tell you all about that later. But this is accessible to you. So imagine you not and no longer having to rough estimate it. When you roll up your resume and it says 70%, well, then guess what? Your resume currently has 70% match. Now, that doesn't mean that some of the suggestions that Wes showed you weren't relevant. Let's say there were relevancies where she could have changed the job title and we changed it and it bumped her up to 66%. But if you're looking for core matching, this is an amazing tool. It takes the guesswork out of it, right? And so this is a game changer. Anybody who knows me knows I love tech. And as soon as I saw this, I was like, I cannot wait because while this isn't necessarily something that some others in the space like I haven't seen, this isn't huge yet. This isn't as huge in the job seeker world yet and in the recruitment world yet. And I find it very interesting because Wes and I decided that we weren't not only going to live score resumes to really show you the power of the tool, but we're going to be doing a webinar on December 14th and 15th. December 14th, it is designed for job seekers. We are talking to people who are looking for jobs. It doesn't matter the industry. December 15th, we're talking to people who are recruiters, career coaches, anyone who has access to one or more job seekers in the process of you serving them, right? So, whether you are a career counselor at a university, wherever you are in that space, that 12/15, December 15th webinar is going to be for you because we're going to focus on it from your perspective. I'm in a ton of recruiter groups right now, and the great resignation is driving folks insane. LinkedIn isn't enough anymore when it used to be the holy grail. I mean, it is, and there are no answers for it. This is what's interesting, Wes, is no one has a solution yet, right? We're scrambling. But I think from a job seeker perspective, this is what you need to be up on so that you can make decisions. If you have people in your life that are coming out of college, powerful, right? Because this is the worst time to be coming out of college, the worst. I mean, you are competing against really qualified professionals who are holding out for cream of the crop roles and everyone's fighting for the remote position and it's tough, right? So we're calling it the great reshuffling, based on an article that we came across in our organization, but we'll talk more about that in the webinar. So Wes, I want to score another resume, so
Yeah.
let's get another one going.
Let me pull that up here. I was just looking at another one here in our list, and I will
And
share that.
while you share your screen, keep going.
Yep.
uh, Julia Rose Ligio says, what if in between our major jobs we had simple jobs that don't apply to the career we want? Well, Julia, as an HR expert, I will tell you this. You get to make decisions about what positions make it to your resume. If you were a part time key holder at the Treasure Box jewelry store while you were waiting to get your HR director role, I'm not sure I'd list that unless there was some relevancy, unless you did something so core HR related that you had to put it on there because you needed the credit given. But if you just were a key holder, you managed a couple of things, made sure no one took some jewelry, closed the door, opened the door, made sure people got lunch, I'm not sure I'd put that there. So you want to really look at those roles because I don't want to discount every part time job or every in between job, but really look at the relevancy of it, right? And sometimes as a job seeker, you can't really always see the relevancy. I found this that it takes experts working with the person who actually did the job to help them see what was possible in that role. Like, no, you did do customer service. You did manage people and processes, right? So, Julia, get you a career coach, girl. All right. So, we're going to get our screen share on again.
Yep, got that pulled up here. That was I was going to touch really briefly. So now that was very interesting. That as we said at the beginning, I approach this from the technology side and understanding how the applicant tracking systems work, what their scoring criteria is, and the technology side. And I've learned so much from you from the human side of someone with experience in the world of recruiting, HR, and so forth. And there is something to be said in noting the technology side because the technology of the applicant tracking systems is the intent is to make it think like a human, to think like a recruiter. And just like you said a second ago, that there's certain things that if it's not relevant, that almost can put a candidate make them seem like they're not as good of a fit. So even if it's just stacking endless experience isn't always a good thing. And I've noticed that a lot of the applicant tracking systems are set up in that kind of a way to not automatically assume that more experience that isn't relevant to the job being applied for isn't always doesn't always result in a higher score.
Right, definitely, especially when we're trying to keep it under. Listen, the one rule that hasn't gone away in resumes that I find interesting is keeping the resume to still to 2 pages. I find that very interesting that that's one steadfast rule that people still hold on to in 2021.
Yeah. All right, so I'm in the dashboard here and I've got the other one pulled up. And for anyone who didn't see at the beginning, this is just the dashboard that any job seeker sees in Ideal Resume. I've just pre-added these resumes to my account here. And again, haven't really gone through it in detail. We're really doing this authentically live. So this is the job description. It is the job title recruiter. We just searched for recruiter on Indeed and found relevant jobs near the location of what the candidate had mentioned. So we've got that one in there. This is the resume, and we're going to go ahead and scan it now and see what our score is. And there we go. We've got 58% on this particular resume. Like before, to figure out how we got to 58%, we look at our little tiles here and indicators. We've got green check boxes, meaning that those categories are all good to go. So in this case, we've got a matching job title or something close to it. Yeah, resume screener was their most recent one, it looks like. Yeah, there it is, work experience. They've got recruiter, screener, not resume screener, recruiter slash screener. And our job title was, yeah, recruiter. So we've got a match there. So that's why we've got our green check mark. We've got some missing skills in this one. So we can look at our skills list and see what is missing. Looks like PeopleSoft is in the job description here somewhere. There it is. And so we can click on that when we see that one's missing. Budget, CMC, CMC. This is interesting. I glanced at this when I just put the job title in. I didn't look at how it was going to score, but CMC in this case is Community Medical Center for this particular job, but it is grabbing it. We also have a certificate. Let's see what our certificate is. Yes, CMC. So interestingly, CMC in this case is meaning Community Medical Center. This looks like it was a hospital job. I can't remember which one we pulled up there, but again, it was just based on the job title. So it is grabbing that as CMC. I think,
Yeah, it was a hospital job. And so
yeah,
what I find, Wes, is that this tool is so awesome because even in picking CMC, I would rather have a quick view that says, oh, CMC is the actual organization's name. So
yeah,
while the tool picked it up for me to look at and consider, it doesn't mean that that's the final go,
right.
right? So, this is still technology. And so, we don't want to discount it, but at least you have a clear understanding. And I think what happened is they were so repetitive in CMC and the job posting.
That's
So
what
I
I was
thought
going to
it
say.
was interesting, right? The repetitiveness.
Yeah, because our system is set up to basically mirror what the applicant tracking systems are doing. We didn't reinvent the wheel in any way in terms of our scoring criteria. So this is really, it's a job description challenge here. So even though as a candidate, you can read that and say, well, that's not what it means. You can at least be kind of equipped with that insight that this job description might be scoring based on an irrelevant term. because that might be coming up in the same way in this company's applicant tracking system, depending on which one they're using. So as a candidate, I mean, you can look at creative things to work that in, not saying you're going to add a certification that you don't have, but in this case, it's actually just the name of the community medical center. And so, yeah, it's very interesting to look at what could be happening to give you insight as a job seeker to know, all right, I'm going to do everything I can to optimize for this. And I can also kind of know where there could be some challenges along the way. So maybe in this case, I reach out to the hiring manager if I get that far and say, hey, I noticed that this certification was popping up and I wondered if that was a challenge in your scoring criteria and so forth. So just an interesting side thought there. But
And
yeah,
I'm
in this
thinking,
case,
Wes, it's so funny because real quick, with the whole CMC thing, I'm thinking, well, maybe in my summary I could put seeking a role at the community medical center,
yeah,
CMC.
yeah,
Isn't that interesting to get it in the resume,
yep.
right? That we could put it in that way. Interestingly enough, I actually used to have a certification through community management, and it was a CMC. I worked for a CMC in community management, so I might have gotten this job.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is I was just looking it up here again, and because we have the job description is relative to medical. It's a hospital, it appears, and CMC is, from what I'm seeing, I'm not an expert on medical all things certifications, but there's also a certification known as cardiac medicine certification. So
Hmm.
if I'm a hospital writing the job description, uh, that person writing the job description may not be aware of all the different medical certifications either. They're working as in probably an HR specialist writing this job description or a hiring manager. And yeah, so there's a lot to be said on what can be done in improving the process from all sides here, from the employer side and the way the job description's written. But in this case, at least it gives the job seeker some insight, like you said, of what they maybe could do, include that in their summary or description of seeking employment at the community medical center and so forth.
Or better yet, that's why December 15th, I better see every recruiter and every career coach and anyone who deals with job seekers because we are going to be parsing through this. We did not plan for this particular instance, but think about that. We're creating job descriptions on a day to day basis, and we aren't scoring them against resumes in this manner because I wouldn't have caught that as a recruiter or an HR manager, right? Unless I was using this tool. And unless the tools applicant tracking systems aren't designed to tell me that kind of information, right? And so potentially in the medical field, your community medical center and it's confusing it for a CMC certification. So there is power in this tool from all respects. I think for those who are independent recruiters, you're going to find value for your clients, hands down. I've been sort of bobbing and weaving, trying to let my clients know that there is a tool that I'm going to be introducing them to so that they can really position themselves to get the best talent. Because think about this. What if Zoe, who is a real person, she lives in New Jersey, I promise, what if she was one of the best candidates but didn't get through because of CMC? Because of the way your job description was written, you basically loved the name of your organization because you've repeated it several times, and yet the system thinks that that's a certification within the medical field, and she's applying for a recruiter job. I mean, that's something that could happen.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Sanaa, to look at that from, because you're right, the applicant tracking systems aren't really set up to, at least not preemptively,
Hmm.
ask you to confirm, do you mean to filter candidates by this criteria? It's sort of after it's too late. When you're already looking at what candidates got filtered after the job post has already been put out there in the world and you're
Hmm.
already filtering candidates, at that point you might figure it out, but it's a little too late. So it's so true that it's really not something that an ATS gives that preemptive information before you go publish it to the world.
Absolutely. Wow. So I got one more question that I've gotten. Um, Anita wants to know if you leave things off of your resume, what do employers think about the whole resume, the holes in the resume? So let me tell you this. Employers don't know what to think about the hole because they don't necessarily know it's a hole unless we're talking about some major gap in time, right? Now we're in 2021, we're job hopping and all of those other formerly taboo areas around job seeking is no longer that big of an issue. And so those those areas can be explained away, especially as we increase our diversity and inclusion initiatives and organizations. No one should be penalized for staying home and taking care of their kids, right? No one should be penalized for some of the reasons that they are absent, taking care of their mental health and other things. And so I think my biggest recommendation for any of my clients is your resume, it really needs to match LinkedIn. Now, I will tell you that. Do not go so far off in terms of what you present to any one employer that when it's time for me to look on LinkedIn and see who we're connected to, see where you've come from, who your bosses are, that I see discrepancies, because that to me is going to be the biggest issue. Now, if you have major holes in in your resume, you can absolutely fill those in. No different than saying you were a key holder at the jewelry store. If you wanted to put in there, right, a position or a section that just basically said, stay at home mom, right? You're not going to get any credit for it. So maybe you don't want to add it. But if you're dying to tell them where you have been for the last 2 years or the 3 years, then if it makes you feel better, put it in. But I say if it's not relevant, once you get the interview, explain it.
Nice.
Yep. So
Yeah.
I can't believe we've like plowed through this hour almost, Wes.
Yeah, it really did go by quick there. We looked at a few scores there, talked about some of the details of what goes into the scores. We've really covered a lot in a short time.
Absolutely. Well, I don't want to give too much away because we're scoring again on December 7th, and that is 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And then you'll want to catch the webinar dates and grab your seats for the webinar on the hrgirlfriends.com website. So if you have never visited the HR Girlfriends website, you'll want to do so today. Look under our events. You will see on the 14th and 15th of December. Can you believe it's December? I digress.
Yep.
But there will be some dates, and you can grab your seat for that webinar. Now, I mentioned earlier that we were going to make this really accessible to the community of HR girlfriends, and we mean that. But here's the catch, it's only going to be offered on the 14th and 15th of December post webinar. Now, the reason we're doing that is because we really want to make sure that we let as many people know that one, this tool exists, and then come for the deeper dive. The assumption is if you come for the deeper dive, you stay till the end, then you're really ready for this power in your pocket, on your cell phone, on your laptop to really get this thing going. So we hopefully will see you on December 14th and 15th. Grab your seat. And at that time, Wes and I will be announcing a deal of a lifetime, I assure you. Wes, I was thinking, what is going to be cheaper than lifetime access to this tool? Yes, I mean lifetime. I said, I just bought groceries that cost more than this idea. Like literally, I bought $114 worth of groceries, and that's more than what you're going to pay for lifetime access to this tool. So, another way that you can make this happen for yourself is, let's say you're busy on the 14th and 15th. Still grab your seat, get your RSVP in. We may or may not have a recording. We haven't decided that yet. But if you're on our mailing list, you will immediately following the webinar receive an email that allows you to take part in that deal. So you have to have one or two ways. You're on the mailing list or you've come to the webinar. We're not putting it on social media. We're not pumping it anywhere else. So those are the two places that you have to be on the 14th and 15th. And remember, if you're on our mailing list, send your family members and friends and colleagues our way. We're going to live positions we can compare resumes against. You're welcome, guys. Yeah, this was good. Wes, any last parting words before we head out?
I don't think so. I think, like you said, come back for the 14th and 15th, where we're going to share a lot more detail. This was just, I think, really the tip of the iceberg in terms of the resume insights, details, and pulling back the curtain for the job seeker side and offering insights and tools even for the HR side too.
Yeah, and if you think we gave all the good things away and there's nothing to talk about in the webinar, you're wrong. So just know we are looking forward to seeing you. And if you have any questions for Wes or I, please reach out to us. You know how to reach me, hrgirlfriends.com. You can do the contact form or info at hrgirlfriends.com. But Wes, how do people reach out to you if they want to learn more about Ideal Resume?
They can come right to our site, idealresume.com. We have a live chat in the bottom. So it's
Hmm.
not 24/7, but if we're not there in the moment you arrive, just fill in the contact form in the live chat. We'll get back to you, and anything submitted there will get it to me. And yeah, I would love to hear from anybody who has questions. I love talking to job seekers. Like I said at the beginning, that's where how I got to where I am, is asking lots of questions, learning from job seekers and their challenges. I love to hear what problems and challenges job seekers are facing, and then learn how to help them. So definitely reach out to us there for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Wes. And thank you, everyone who joined us tonight. We'll look forward to seeing you soon and have a great rest of your week. Take care. Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
Sana.